Hi, everybody. It's Brenda.
And I'm Sarah.
Today we have our boss, mentor, girl boss, Eileen's Melendez with us. And just a little background on who Eileen's is she brings over 25 years of experience in HR and business management with an MBA from University's Fox School of Business. She is a CEO at HR Transformed and a professor at Temple University with certifications in workplace behavior analysis and leadership coaching. She's based in New York's Hudson Valley. Eileen enjoys cycling, Pilates, rock climbing with her family. Um, Hi, Eileen.
Hi.
We're so happy to have you on.
Happy
Yes,
to be here.
we've been waiting for this episode all week since
Yeah.
Sarah saw that one article that we
The
that
article
she
that shall not be named.
No. Yeah,
um
I think
yeah.
the big thing like we were getting into today's topic is the generational differences in the workplace,
Mhm.
especially with three generational differences between the three of us. I think it's some interesting perspectives also like in the level of experience in HR and the workplace is incredibly varied too. So that's something super interesting to get into. So I think like the main question we were getting into, right, that started us wanting to talk about this episode was um something about like the new generation hitting the workforce, and there's a lot of pushback from a lot of hiring managers, it seems like in these reports that we're seeing, of they have some very negative opinions about 2025 entering the workplace. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, Eileen's, as like somebody who's been in the business forever. Like, is that something that like we see time and time again, or is this kind of new?
Yeah, it's not new at all. So every time a new generation enters the workplace, and I'm in my 40s, so I've seen a couple come in at this point, and being in HR for so long, there is always something to be said about the generation that's coming in, that they are entitled, that they don't want to work, or, nobody wants to work hard. And to me, in my opinion, the truth of the matter is that you're going to see all types of workers in every generation. Yes, some generations are bred a bit differently, or they're raised by a generation of a certain sort of thought process on how they should approach work. So it really does depend. Like I was a young mom. So the way that I was raised by my parents in terms of work and how I should be, I emulated what I saw in them, super hardworking, really dedicated, loyal, and I spent many years at my jobs. That is the same with my own son, like my oldest son, who's 24 now at this point. He does that. He's very loyal to his work, he's very dedicated to his work. It's all in. And he's in this new entering generation of workers. And so it I hate the labels that they put on people. So, it's what kind of work ethic do you have and how hard do you want to work? It just varies from person to person, not necessarily generation. So, yeah, I take a little bit of offense to that, on behalf of my kids or the kids that are entering the workforce now or people who are out of college. And also, people who have had adversity and had to not go to college or, or entering college at a later years to finish their degree. They get that bad rap too because they're just entering the workforce now or they're trying or people are raising kids and then coming in later. Like there's all these expectations as opposed to just like, let's see how it goes. The labels just are not great.
And I think that's like something really important that like isn't talked about is the ageism goes both ways, right? So like we have ageism biases towards younger people and towards older people. Like my
Right.
mom right now, love her to death. She is getting her degree, like going back to college to get her degree
Wow.
because she like was in a different field for most of her life and now is going back and wants to work in education. And it's incredibly daunting to be like that only person who's like not 20 in those classrooms. And it
Right.
feels incredibly exclusive in the same way that a lot of young people can feel in their environment of like, I know nothing. And
Right.
everybody here like knows this and like this is the next step in their life and this is where they're supposed to be. And
Right.
it's incredibly humbling to like see that on the other side of things, right? Like to be like,
Hmm.
okay, I've also been there. And it's doesn't matter like that I'm 20 or like she's 50. Like it's regardless, like there's so many different ways that ageism can show up in the
Right.
workplace, and our biases come together in that way of like I do think like as somebody in that generation that's being like criticized right now, like it is scary to think like, oh, these people come in thinking I'm entitled, so maybe like I need to show like more of a malleable personality. Like I need to go into these interviews being a little like more laid back, more like I am
Right.
willing to do anything and
Yeah.
everything to get this job. Um, Brenda, you've been out of school for a little bit, so
Yes.
you're like post this transition in the middle of things. So when you were entering the job force, was this something that like came up for you?
Yes. So I actually started in education. And this was actually when I was just applying, like I was a substitute for a program. And I came in because I knew my coworkers were a little bit older, and I knew there was this idea that my generation were just lazy teachers. We just throw in a movie and that's it. It's all fun and games. And I didn't want to come across as that way, but my class did have games, but like they're educational games, right? Because I was teaching ESL. So we need to integrate some fun in it. Otherwise, you're just sitting there reading verbs and all that stuff. So um, I had a teacher one time come by during break and she was like, "Your class sounds like they're having a lot of fun." I was like, "Yeah, we were just doing this activity." I was excited. I thought she was like trying to be my friend or whatever. And she goes, "I give you another couple of years before, this like you like burn out or like you stop doing all these fun things in your classroom." And I was taken back. I was like, I'm actually very excited to go to class every day and bring these activities to my classmates and not classmates, sorry, my students. And they are older, right? Because it was an after school like evening English program. And they were having fun. They were like, "Hey, I'm learning a lot of English, but I feel like I'm also playing, right? Learning through play versus
Hmm.
just sitting there memorizing vocabulary." So I don't know what it was. I went home, I was pretty upset, and my mom was like, "Sometimes they're jealous that their class isn't having as much fun as you, and they don't know how to get there, right? Because they have a
Right.
different idea of what a classroom should look like." So yeah, that was one of the hardest parts of starting my teaching career.
Yeah.
I feel like that's also a super universal experience. Like a lot of people are incredibly jealous that like their jobs aren't as fulfilling and like joyful because it's incredibly lucky like that we get to sit here and like be doing something we love so much every day.
Mhm.
But a lot of people like see that and are like that's just not possible. Like it's something that they don't know. And I think it's a lot of like Eileen's what you were talking about is like what you see in your family growing up is like
Right.
oh, what's the value here? Where like are people that we know pursuing jobs for like fulfillment or is it a financial thing because of that's just like where we came from?
Right. And there's a lot of people who are trying to enter the workforce and change careers, similar to what Brenda was just talking about. Whereas, like, you see this resume with someone with 20 years of experience coming in for a junior job somewhere, they immediately get passed over because there's this expectation, because of their age, that they're going to demand more money. Or, if you're not using trade pay transparency as part of your recruitment process, which I highly recommend, even if your state doesn't require it, there's this expectation of here's how much the job pays, regardless of how much experience you bring in from other careers or, having experience in the world. This is what the job pays, and it should be fair, by the way, putting that out there. Um, you interview someone and you realize that they're much older. Sometimes younger managers have this fear of managing older employees,
Mhm.
employees that are older than them, even by a year. And it's all in that mind, right? So, like, how do we get to that place? What do you both think about like how do we get to that place where people are just more accepting? So accept the entitlement or accept the age or accept the experience or accept the desire and the passion to want to learn and grow and move on from just like, you know, complaining about it.
That's a good one. I'm thinking also of ways to how do we not generalize, right?
Hmm.
Because I feel like it's almost natural for us to come in and we see an older person or a younger person and we just immediately associate all these like stereotypes. Yeah. So, Sarah,
I
how
th
do you
feel
feel?
like Like, I think the big one is like tech savviness. Like, we automatically assume people of like my generation and younger are extremely tech savvy, in which like I've onboarded people who are like, I have no clue how to work Outlook. And I'm like, okay, like that's totally fine. Like, you can struggle with technology and be our age and like be raised in a generation where technology is incredibly accessible. But also, like, it's understanding of like, hey, people are gonna come from all walks of life, and like it doesn't really matter like where you come from, it's how you show up. And that
Mhm.
to me has like been the biggest thing is like see somebody as like who they present themselves at work. And like I like there is a big line to divide between like, okay, like I need to take into account their past experiences, but I also need to like allow them that room to show up as a different person and be like, okay, like, people change, people want different things in their lives. People can go 20 years in a career and be like, you know what? This isn't for me anymore. Like, I've had my time in that career. I'm moving on. And like, I think it's a huge thing of just allowing somebody like the grace, I think, to just like show up differently. And I think a lot of what we're learning, especially with like college kids going through COVID is like a lot of like where our lives are and our life experiences are completely different. Like, we grew up during this like incredibly socially isolating period. So a lot of people don't like go into an interview and know how to act because like their college years were online. Like you don't really know how to show up for an interview and show up to classes correctly because like that wasn't something you were doing.
Mhm.
And it's the thing of like giving that grace, but also at the same point in time, taking the initiative as the person coming in to be like, these are the things I'm not showing up as, and I need to learn to be better. And, cutting that like middle difference of slack, giving somebody the opportunity.
Yeah. I think something we've done at HRT is have the resources ready, right? Like how to respond to a phishing email, how do you detect a phishing email? Because
Yeah.
something that we might think is so obvious might not be obvious. And if we have the resources ready, no matter their age group or who they are, they can just go in and read it and be like, oh, okay. And that way we don't even know that who's looking at that document at this point. So I think all workplaces should have resources just ready for their employees, not for their older ones or the younger ones, just for all employees in general.
And I also think that we need to celebrate the upbringing of people that have come up in these generations that come, after us. So to Sarah's point, the generation that went to college during COVID had to be resilient, had to deal with disappointment. A lot of them missed graduation, a lot of them missed the socialization aspect of things. And so some of that awareness of the workplace is missing or lacking, or they just don't have that experience. So I think there needs to be some patience around there, but celebrate some of the things that they come with, which is this innate way of learning things on the fly or having to be resourceful on their own or just having this instant gratification. I see that with all of my kids. Like things are they happen so quickly these days. And, my parents' generation, my generation, we didn't have that. We didn't have, like, if we needed to watch the news, like, we didn't know what was going on. We couldn't just go on Twitter or, or Facebook or, we couldn't see breaking news on the internet. That wasn't available to us. Now you hear a sound outside, you go on your Citizen app, and then oh, I heard that fire truck and this is what's happening. There's something to celebrate about the fact that that resiliency and that ability to just kind of roll with the way technology comes in. It happens at every generation, but even more so with this generation that's coming up. I'm excited about what my kids' generation is going to look like because there's going to be so much advancement in technology. It is also a little bit scary for someone who didn't grow up with technology
Mhm.
to even fathom or understand what the workplace is going to look like. So I would say celebrate, stay on trend, and admire what this generation is bringing in. And yes, there are going to be behavioral differences, like someone seeming to be entitled or someone seeming to be different than we are. And that's going to be, whole D&I conversation later, but really focusing on the age and the generational differences that we bring to the table. This is so not new. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen more when my 10 and 12-year-old join the workforce. It's going to keep happening. So celebrate and, seek to understand before you're understood. My generation, we've always tried to feel like understood. Every generation feels that way. So like, why do we keep doing this to them? Let's just like get them to feel understood coming in. Yeah, it's different. Yeah, I'm not used to this. Yes, I need to roll with it. Yes, I need to be accepting of the change. So we all need to shift a little bit.
One of the things like we talked about like briefly when we were like even pitching this idea was like also understanding from like a younger person's perspective where that like drawback comes from because like the retirement age in the US is like disappearing and people are being like the whether like we like it or not, like a lot of people are like being older in positions and they cost more money because they have more experience. And the people make a cost decision to hire somebody younger because they're cheaper.
Right.
And that creates like a lot of adversity. But to understand that as like a younger person coming in and understand and be graceful about that, I think is incredibly important too in that side of things to like yes, everybody should be given grace, but also understand like, hey, there's a reason people are like upset and see you as a threat because you kind of are. And I
Right.
think that's like the important thing to also take is like don't get hurt by this stuff because it's people like just upset and scared, but it's also like it's not gonna change. Like people are
It's not.
people.
Exactly. People are people and we can't change their opinion. They have to be accepting of their own change of opinion. And all we can do is, like you said, have grace with each other, be open with each other, and really just like deal with it. You know? It's
Yeah.
like, we're just gonna have to deal with it. We can only accept those things that are within our control, right? Like people are just so shut off to the fact of things that they can't control and they complain and they generalize and they label. And we just need to stop doing that with this workforce.
Well, thanks so much for coming on today,
Oh, you're
Eileen.
welcome. Love hanging out with you.
So as I ask Brenda every episode, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking a decaf caramel coffee with oat milk.
Yum. Brenda, I'm gonna hit you with the same question. What are you drinking?
I am on my second coffee of the day, and this is my iced latte.
Ooh. I'm still on my first with my iced coffee. It's large. It will take me the whole day. But let's have a cute little toast towards more acceptance and grace in the workplace.
All right.
Toast to that.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for sharing a cup with us today on Tea with HRT. We hope today's episode brought you some laughs, fresh insight, and practical takeaways you can use. If you enjoyed this blend of conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little extra warmth in their workday. Follow us on Instagram and send your thoughts or topic suggestions to tea@hrtransform.com. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep your mug full, your spirit warm, and your conversations brewing. This is Tea with HRT, where work meets warmth.